I'm not much of a fan of anime licensed games, but the Code Geass nostalgia started to hit me not so recently because I'm late again after a very sudden collab with Counterside a while back, bringing me back down memory lane at the time of Spinzaku and buying clothes at the soup store, which consequently had me downloading Code Geass Lost Stories.
What do you mean there's more soup?
But like many other games from Japan, for some bizarre reason, this game was region locked. And unless you use an Android or bypass the region lock somehow, the devs don't want a good 3/4 of the world to play the game. But I am a firm believer in Lelouch of the Rebellion. Mainly the Rebellion bit. And I decided to, of course, rebel against the devs to play this game they want to keep so sorely away from us. And so, I've taken the risk of getting a dodgy APK to launch yet another gacha game you have never heard of, so that you don't have to. And a quick disclaimer, because I'm late to the party as always by 4 to 5 months, this review is based on my impressions of the game at launch to give you a general idea of what to expect from the game. So things will likely have changed with cooler units. And you can always let me know in the comments below on the state of the game in current day. There's not much about the game out there outside of Reddit, so take whatever you hear from me with a grain of salt. You know what? Take the whole damn salt shaker. You're probably gonna need it if you ever roll the gacha in this game. After a few near misses and getting a virus on my emulator,
I'll never forgive the Japanese!
I finally got into the game. You get your typical pre-install with a new opening by the same guys behind the iconic
Jiboo!
and are finally introduced to your new protagonist.
It's a me, Mario!
Or Maya, Easel. Because the Black Knights are not simply fellow rebels, they are
family.
And as with many other gacha games, the male protagonist is the canon choice based on all the promotional material. But screw the canon and went with a female protagonist instead, most of which are fully voiced in the tutorial and in the story. And so, you're tossed into one of the battles I vaguely recall from Season 1, where Kallen saves Lelouch from a bunch of Britannian soldiers after he gets caught with his pants down in the middle of a bush or something. If I got this part wrong, don't mind me, I haven't seen the series since 2008 and kept it this way because it was way funnier to rely on my vague memory to preserve my nostalgia and not spend another few eons procrastinating this video any longer than I already have by watching the actual series. The game initially starts off as a retelling of the main story of Code Geass, but the meaning of the word Lost Stories. It's all the anime watchers getting extremely fucking lost by the plot of the game. Our protagonist, who has never existed in the story in the first place, has now been conveniently inserted into this exact same battle that I described before with their purple nightmare frame of unknown origin that's on par with the Lancelot in battle. If you're confused, don't worry, because no matter how terribly I can butcher the story from vague YouTube clips and my 2009 kid memories of the series, this never happened. At the very least, it's not just your ordinary retelling of the main series like a lot of other anime licensed games, because your self-insert is surprisingly well written, and had me intrigued enough to forgive them for their creative liberties, but it's still not a lot. To sum up the story, your main character is an 11, also known as Japanese, after the Holy Empire Britannia takes up the entirety of Japan for pink energy rocks in Mount Fuji, erasing their entire national identity. So they spend the entire series fighting each other with their Mobile Suit Armored Core Metal Gundams, also known as Nightmare Frames, that come with built-in rollerblades and these cables that fire out to trip over AT-AT walkers. Pretty awesome if you ask me, but I've played enough Armored Core to know somewhere out there will call it a knockoff of insert mecha franchise here. So Mario,
Mama Luigi!
in this case, want revenge on Britannia for dropping their parents and an orphan girl's HP to 0. If you've seen this series, it's literally Lelouch's backstory, where he wants revenge on Britannia for assassinating his mom and crippling his sister and causing her to go blind. At least the MC isn't low-key royalty who got tossed up by Emperor Charles B. Ballsack. Worst dad of all time.
I will have my revenge!
Fortunately for our main character, they're half Britannian and half Japanese and were adopted by a Britannian family and took on their Western surname to avoid the systemic racism. Kallen is in the exact same situation except she's fully Japanese. This unfortunately means your main character is essentially the Frankenstein of Kallen and Lelouch. Outside of the slight variations of the story with our new canon fanfiction OC, it's the same story as watching the entirety of Code Geass from start to finish.
My heart. Wah.
Except with completely unrelated Bloons tower defense segments in between to stagger the progression of the story. This is right smack in the middle of your slice of life school anime cutscenes while forcing you to play through tower defense to unlock the next chapters. Just like how Fire Emblem is just a dating sim with strategy in between, holding you back from your alone time with Edelgard. And with all the differences in the story that you won't pick up on if you never watched Code Geass, this really isn't the best starting point for those new to the franchise, and I really recommend watching the anime first before even touching this game. Let's go through the gameplay. In terms of units, you roll for pilots in the gacha, where some of the higher tiered characters come with their own nightmare frames on launch, like Suzaku and Lancelot, or Kallen with a red glass score, because the devs couldn't give us the Guren too quickly on launch to stagger content and create hype. I know fully well the Guren is now available as of this review, but as I said before, this script is centuries old. Back to the gameplay. Pilots range from the random characters that aren't your main cast, the Ashford girls who clearly can't pilot nightmare frames, Princess Euphemia, who's a pacifist who wouldn't get into a killer robot, rollerblade, armored core, yet ends up in one anyway as a gacha unit, because waifus. And of course the funniest part, you get to chuck the literal Emperor Britannia himself right into a Glasgow. If you're unlucky with the gacha, you're going to be starting with these base brown Glasgows with different weapons that work well with the 6 different pilot types that you get in the game. But as far as SSRs went, I ended up with Guilford, who comes with his own robot and is Cornelia's simp knife, or something from what I remember. His taste in women are pretty based, but he himself is alright, I guess. Still would have preferred someone like Suzaku, or of course, Kallen instead, who is probably the character that you're here for in the first place. Also comes with a 3% SSR rate and 200 pity, which is not too bad, but there's also been news that a few servers did get closed down very recently. So as with any other anime licensed gacha game, do spend your money wisely. Reroll, and avoid spending if you can.
Come to Papa!
Combat's as simple as placing units on the board, where ground units are used to block enemies from passing through to the end of the board, and the cliff units shoot at aerial units and shoot downwards at enemies passing through. They'll attack anything that enters their red squares, and ignore everything else, even if they're right next to them.
Help me!
No, I don't think I will.
Literally, Arknights or Bloons, and I really don't know about you, but watching a bunch of nightmare friends flying to their deaths at the hands of your units standing on top of a cliff gets extremely boring, because you know giant robots are definitely capable of so much more. And the most excitement you get out of this game is old school RuneScape with robots. But on the bright side, the nightmare frame models are pretty decent for a mobile game, which are the main thing you'll be staring at for most of the game anyway, apart from Kallen's gigantic, ginormous Guren Satan 8 element and to top it all off, Spin Zaku attacked my save file and Spin kicked it right into oblivion. So I attempted to restart from scratch, where I actually ended up rolling Suzaku and came to the realization it just really wasn't worth regrinding that 3 hours I spent trying to read the story in between all the tower defense segments, because tower defense isn't really my thing, and eventually deleted the game once and for all. As far as the verdict goes, Code Geass on the save file gets a generous 6 out of 10 MX. If it weren't a tower defense game while making use of generic battles with zero relevance to the story to stagger story progression, this may have gotten a much higher score from me, maybe a 7. Tower defense is not really for me personally, but this really just took the cake and blew it to pieces in a RuneScape combat tutorial. I didn't count the fact that I lost my save file as part of this verdict either, because it was likely my fault for not linking my account before closing the game, but it's still a strange occurrence since it should have been linked to my Google Play account either way.
You naughty, naughty.
The main character does have some good writing, which did keep this game out of the 5 out of 10 range, but I can only say this is really worth playing for the biggest of Code Geass fans, who are likely few and far between in this day and age, and I am going to guess a lot of people have either never seen it or forgotten about it by this point, outside of the occasional collaboration. If you enjoy having a morally grey character who finesses his enemies with intellect and the power to force people to do his bidding, similar to the likes of Light from Death Note, I would recommend watching the first and second seasons of the anime instead of playing this game. Watch the third movie and then go watch Akito the Exile, and that new spin-off that's coming out as well. Or if you're lazy enough, just watch all 3 movies, because 50 episodes can be a lot to cover for some people. Just fill yourself in on a few changes like Shirley when you're done with the movies. And so, stay safe, stay humble, and if you're old enough to remember, Pizza Hut supported the rebellion with their stuffed crust pizzas. Like, damn, this was the time when Pizza Hut was actually good. This is the End Night, and we will see you next time.